again.
It's remarkable. They just keep on going. They find ways to win tonight. And the offense started slow, but it was the defense.
Well, that's just the way the Patriots drew it up, right? The 35-14 win for New England, as expected. The game was actually closer than that. For the vast majority of the game, the Patriots weren't singularly impressive, but Giants managed to keep them close enough given the fact they really had nobody. I mean, the injury list was comical for the Giants. Tom Brady runs the ball for 2 touchdowns, 7 carries for 6 yards and 2 touchdowns, throws for 334 more. No touchdowns and an interception thrown. Patriots get the win, and Patriots get the win rather easily, as it turns out. But kind of an interesting way of getting the scores. It wasn't exactly just the Patriots cruising on offense by any stretch of the imagination. The scoring started off by that blocked kick. They recover a blocked kick, and then they run it back. So you go ahead and get that squared. Then you get you had defensive touchdowns, special teams touchdowns, a fumble recovery touchdown by Kyle Van Noy. The Giants had a fumble recovery return. I mean, just a weird kind of game. Not a singularly impressive performance by either, but of course, the Patriots come out with the win. The Patriots do go to 5-0. The Patriots, as expected, dominate the AFC's standings. They are the only unbeaten team in the AFC after Kansas City lost, and have a 2-game lead over everybody except for Kansas City and the Bills. And they really kind of do have a 2-game lead over the Bills because they've beaten the Bills directly. So they find themselves in an outstanding position. If you would have told anybody else the last remaining unbeaten NFL teams would have been the Patriots, people would have not been terribly surprised, but then said, oh, and the 49ers. Ooh, might have surprised some people there. So big win for the Pats. Same old, same old. Giants are not terribly good. They're rebuilding. Plus, they have injuries. It's about what you expected. Tom Brady also passed Peyton Manning, moving into second place all time on the yardage list.
8 more games later. That don't count.
Kevin, who might be Peyton Manning's biggest fan that is not related to him.
I'm his best friend, not Stokley.
Is very upset about this. It's always going to happen. Brady just needed 18 yards to pass Manning. Obviously, 300 plus gets it done pretty easily. And in this case, who knows? Brady at 42 years old is going to put up all the records if he can continue to play. Right now, he's behind Drew Brees by little under 3,000 yards. Brees, a little younger, but who knows what it's going to be like after the injury. Brady, who very rarely seems to get hit, seems to do a good job taking care of himself. Well, gets the job done. Gets a win. Patriots keep rolling. Tom Brady goes up the record books. So, good for him, I guess. Whatever. It's Denver. I don't think there's going to be a lot of people that are super thrilled about the Patriots winning again. Actually, most of the league isn't going to be particularly thrilled about the Patriots winning again, but you've had to expect it going forward. For the Denver Broncos, of course, they are trying to right the ship after getting their first win of the year, a victory over the Chargers in L.A. Now they're going to come back home and face a Tennessee Titans team that isn't as good as the Chargers. Now, Chargers have some serious injuries, but at the same time, I would say this is a team that's not quite as good, and Denver's at home. And don't underestimate the fact that Denver now knows they can win. It feels really strange. You heard Emmanuel Sanders allude to it, talking about on Monday, saying that while you're losing, you feel like you're never going to win again. And then after you start winning, you feel like you're never going to lose again. So I think that's basically, while that's an extreme, it's the idea. The Broncos feel confident now. They feel like they know what they can do. And they can build upon it. A couple of funny moments today. It's hilarious. The NFL just never ceases to amaze me with the drama that some of these guys put together. Keenan Allen, who came into the Broncos game on Sunday as the leading receiver in the AFC, had an atrocious, absolutely atrocious game. No other way to put it. He was not good. He was passed. DJ Chark is now the leading receiver for Jacksonville. And Allen dropped a spot. Well, Allen went to Instagram and said, now, y'all know darn well that boy can't hold my jockstrap. Stop it. Go watch the tape, man. He later told reporters in the locker room, it's not a secret. Okay. Maybe Chris Harris didn't completely shut you down, but I'm not sure I'm going to tell people, go look at the tape to see my 4 for 18 line. He had a long of 10 yards, and the other 3 catches went for a combined 8 yards. Allen said on Thursday, I guess it was a tough day for the offense. Turnovers in the red zone a couple times, couldn't get it done. It was turnovers. It was self-inflicting wounds. Just kind of strange. Now, Allen has an axe to grind with the Broncos. Last year, when the Broncos beat them by 1, 23-22, Allen, after the game, said, no, I don't think they played at all, referring to Denver. We dominated the game. Turnovers. We gave them the points, and that's what happened. They suck, end quote. Well, the Broncos did only win 6 games, so, I mean, you could make that argument, I guess, Keenan Allen. But I just love the idea on Thursday telling reporters, go watch the tape, man. It's not a secret. You went 4 for 18. You had 18 yards. 18 yards. Jeff Hireman had 26 yards. He's the Broncos' backup tight end. He's very rarely ever healthy. He outgained you. You got to be kidding me. Just weird. I know the wide receiver position is where you run into the divas. I get that. But that's just weird. Talk after you win a game, I guess. But you lose a game and say, that guy can't cover me. Go look at the tape. You had 4 catches for 18 yards. 4 catches, I guess, is okay. Cortland Sutton had 4 catches, but he had 92 yards, not 18. Come on, Keenan Allen. I want to say he's better than that, but this is an axe he continue to grind against the Broncos for whatever reason. Guess the Broncos don't really care, right? In the end, the beauty when folks talk like that, unless you're Richard Sherman trying to make Baker Mayfield look bad, is you can genuinely just kind of point up and go, scoreboard, which is what the Broncos were able to do. Well, you had 18 yards on 4 catches, and you lost. So, yeah, just strange. Don't quite understand what Keenan Allen had in mind with that one. Really don't get it, but okay. Whatever. The Broncos will not be facing a receiver nearly as dangerous. A.J. Brown is the leading receiver for the Tennessee Titans. They have thrown to him 19 times. He's got 12 catches for 250 yards. Corey Davis has 201. Those are the only guys over 200 yards at all. For comparison, the Broncos have 2 guys over 200, but Cortland Sutton is over 400 and Emmanuel Sanders is over 300. So the Broncos receivers have gotten the job done substantially better than the Titans. Marcus Mariota has a quarterback rating that's better than Joe Flacco's. But if you like some of the newer metrics like QBR, Mariota's only a little better than half as good as Flacco. And I don't think that Flacco's exactly been setting the world on fire. But it means that the Broncos are facing an offense that isn't terribly explosive. And that's a good sign. The Broncos obviously aren't either. Averaging 18 points a game is not exactly impressive. The Broncos have 90 points on the year. The Titans have 98. Now, the difference is the Broncos have allowed 106 points. The Titans a whopping 30 points fewer, 76. Their plus 22-point differential margin, believe it or not, is good enough for 4th in the AFC. That's not too shabby. They have found a way to at least make themselves effective in that regard with that 4th best. That's why they're 2-3 on the year. Now, they haven't won a road game, but they have won 2 on the road. 2-1 on the road. So they seem to be comfortable there, early on at least. And the Broncos, by the way, if you are a season ticket holder, or, you've just been watching on television, you will probably also notice the Broncos are 0-2 at home after losing to Chicago and to Jacksonville. So they haven't been able to get it going at home. The Titans haven't either, but the Titans are the ones on the road. So I think the Broncos get this game, but it's not a gimme. The defensive numbers, and we'll get into them over the course of the show, but the defensive numbers that Tennessee have put up, they're no joke. Remember, before the Broncos played the Jaguars, the week prior they played the Titans. The Titans got 9 sacks in that game. 9. They surrendered 9 of those. So maybe Von Miller has a chance to do something special here. It's not a good offense, but it is a good defense. And we'll have to take a look at all those things because it's intriguing. And I don't think we necessarily know how it's all going to go. Want to know what you think, too, as we get closer to the game, kind of seeing all the other things. We're now into week 6, thanks to Thursday Night Football ending there. What do you think? RamosLaw.com. Text line is 303-713-1043. You can call. You can text. Get in on the discussion. Talk about what you expect to see from the Broncos. What do you think about Von Miller's game? Noah Fant, Phillip Lindsay. We'll talk about the impact that all of them can have next. Could you get more of that out of Noah Fant against the Tennessee Titans? The answer is, well, maybe. This is a team in Tennessee that has not been particularly good against tight ends. Now, they're not getting gashed left and right. Don't get me wrong there. It's not going crazy. But they've had a propensity to give up a couple big games. Week 1 against David Njoku of Cleveland, 4 for 37 and a touchdown. Week 2, combination of Eric Ebron and Jack Doyle that the Colts bring, 5 for 46 and a touchdown. Jacksonville has O'Shaughnessy and Jeff Swain. They went 3 for 26 and a touchdown. Week 4, they didn't surrender a touchdown, but really felt like it. Austin Hooper of the Falcons went bonkers, 9 for 130. No touchdown. And then Knox for Buffalo, just 2 for 12. They did a good job there. In Noah Fant's case, Noah Fant is averaging, now he's dropped off, but he's averaging 27.2 yards per game, about 2.5 catches a game, on average. The Broncos probably need to try to feature him a little bit more in this game, because his benchmark is about what they surrendered to Jacksonville. And in 3 of those 4 games, besides that one, the Titans have surrendered not only touchdowns, but yards as well. So there's a lot of reasons to think that this will go well for Fant if the Broncos want to work him out. Now, I don't think we're looking at the Austin Hooper performance. I mean, that'd be nice, but I don't think the Broncos need him to go 9 for 130 to be happy with how the game would shake out. Jeff Legwold of ESPN covers the Broncos, of course, had a chance to talk with Rich Scangarello about Noah Fant. Scangarello said that there are flashes of good and flashes of bad with Fant, but also, quote, flashes of greatness. Scangarello said, we ask more of our tight ends than any other position outside of the quarterback. They need to know the run game, pass protection, and they have to be route runners. And when they practice, that means they fatigue because they run routes and block like a lineman. All of that adds up and accumulates on a guy when he plays a lot of reps, especially when they're rookies and they're learning the league. That's the trickle-down effect. That's what happens when a guy gets loose with the ball or tries to do too much. The finer things aren't there. A year from now, he'll be a completely different player. Could that happen next week and get better and better? Absolutely. And that's the goal. Fant himself said, to me, it's about eliminating the rough spots. We've talked about this with the tight ends in history. And the record of guys as a rookie, it's not very strong in general. That's just the way it is. You don't get huge numbers in your first year. Anything over 600 in a rookie year is unbelievable. That'll put you in the top 10 of all time. You go to that top 10 of all time, and I've mentioned it here before, you'll notice among rookies, you don't hear the name Rob Gronkowski or Jimmy Graham or Tony Gonzalez or Shannon Sharp or Antonio Gates or George Kittle or Zach Ertz. None of those folks. It's a tough position. Scangarello talked about Kittle, who, of course, he worked with in San Francisco. In his rookie campaign, he had 43 catches and 2 touchdowns. The next year, 88 catches, 1,377. Scangarello said, quote, George's first year in the league, I think he led the NFL in drops. He was a liability in the run game at times, and he would break the huddle and be unsure. So what Fant is going through is pretty normal for tight end. It's a very, very difficult spot. And what he's doing isn't really all that bad. That's the funny thing, is you tend to look at it and say, okay, well, boy, are we really impressed with that? It's not that big a deal. Who cares? The numbers aren't very good. Not very excited about it. Okay, I get all of that. I do. I completely understand. And right now, the total yardage for him isn't really all that impressive. So for the Broncos, how do you get him involved? At a certain point, you have to take the training wheels off, right? I think you do. I think you have to. I think for the Broncos, they have to find a way to get Joe Flacco another option somewhere. They've got to get him another option, another target. It's not seemingly going to be Deshaun Hamilton. There's still time for him to make his move. I think that the Broncos would be foolhardy to give up on him quite so quickly. But the tight end is going to be on the field a lot more, right? I think that's pretty clear. 136 yards receiving for Fant on the year. Now, that doesn't sound very impressive. But actually, it's ahead of Jimmy Graham. It's the same as basically just a couple yards different than O.J. Howard. It's ahead of Jared Cook. His numbers aren't that far out of whack. It just takes these guys a little while to get moving. Your Travis Kelce's of the world don't come fully formed. He wasn't part of that list either of the top 10 receivers in history among tight ends for their rookie season. So I think the Broncos have a weapon here. Now, is he immediately going to be Kittle or Kelce or Evan Ingram, one of the guys that is, by the way, in the top 10 all the time? No, I don't think he necessarily will be. But he's only a few yards behind. He's fewer than 30 yards behind TJ Hawkinson, his teammate, and the guy he backed up at Iowa, right? Guy was definitely picked higher, expected to explode onto the scene, had a great game early on, and then kind of tapered off because the tight end position is a difficult one to play. It's a difficult one to wrap your head around. If you can't go out and block well enough, then everybody knows that you'll be passing. They'll see your guy on the field, and they'll go ahead and back off the line of scrimmage. We know this will happen because we watched the Broncos experience it when they had Julius Thomas, who simply, in the words of Shannon Sharp, couldn't block the sun from his eyes. Because of that, every single time Julius Thomas came onto the field, teams knew the Broncos were passing. The one thing you can't do in football is give away the game. You can't give away the play. You can't let people know what you're doing. You certainly can't cut off one of the two binary choices, run or pass, and expect to be very successful. So that's the trick for Fant. The bright side, he's been taking the snaps. He has absolutely been taking all those snaps. He has dominated those snaps. And in that facet, I think he's played generally pretty well for a rookie. This game, it seems like there's a chance to do this here. It seems like for the Broncos, working Noah Fant in early might really be beneficial. As Cortland Sutton gets more and more attention, and as Emmanuel Sanders will be watched closely, giving the Broncos situation the idea he might be traded. Oh, and, he's still very good. He's bounced back very nicely from injuries last year. Those two guys are going to be shadowed. Phillip Lindsay is the Broncos' third leading receiver in both catches and yards. He's going to be watched very closely. Fant's the guy that can just slide under the radar a little bit. I think the Broncos would be well advised to get him going, get a little confidence, get Joe Flacco to be confident in him, and force the Titans to guard more players than they might be expecting to. We'll see if they do that. There are other ways the Broncos can get things going, and we talked about Phillip Lindsay there. Lindsay's a big part of the equation. Should he be bigger? We'll look at it next. Did the Denver Broncos give Phillip Lindsay the ball enough times in their win over the Chargers on Sunday? Should they go for more this Sunday against the Titans? Lindsay had 19 touches. He had the most carries on the team, 15-13 over Royce Freeman, and was far more effective in them. 114 yards on the ground compared to 61 for Freeman. That's a 7.6 per carry to Freeman's 4.7. Plus, he had the touchdown along at 32, and the 4 catches was tied for the team lead. Didn't have the yardage Courtland Sutton did. Sutton had 92 on his 4 catches, 70 of them on one long touchdown. But Lindsay's 4 catches were second on the team. Flacco only completed 14 passes out of his 20 attempts. So the question going forward for the Broncos, when you look at Phillip Lindsay, we know he's not the biggest guy. Okay, we get that. He's not the biggest guy. The idea that you're going to compare him to sort of Christian McCaffrey light, no, not really. But he is probably the Broncos' most dynamic offensive player, with apologies to Emmanuel Sanders and Courtland Sutton. But that's probably what you're looking at. The guy that is the most dynamic. If you get him in space, he's extraordinarily dangerous. You've seen that. We've all seen that. The Chargers saw it. For Lindsay, the touches, the idea that he hasn't been getting enough touches has kind of been hovering around for a while, right? Well, let's go through it. He had 15 against the Raiders in week 1. He had 17 against the Bears in week 2. He had 25 against the Packers, 10 against Jacksonville. And I think that's where people take a look at it and go, oh, wow, okay, he needs to have the ball more, because he had 10 catches. Or 10 touches, pardon me. 1 catch, 9 carries. And then back to 19 against the Chargers. But otherwise, 15, 17, 25. They'd gone up for all 3 weeks in the first 3 weeks. Then the weird result with Jacksonville. And then they went back to him. 19 and got effective, good numbers. Lindsay has 3 touchdowns on the season already, all on the ground. But he's been effective in the passing game as well. Should the Broncos be getting Lindsay the ball more? If so, what do you like it to be? At this point in the season, and yeah, you have to take that weird Jacksonville game in there. I know the Broncos preferred not to work it that way, but that's the way it was. Lindsay is averaging 17.2 specifically touches per game. I think it can go higher than that, but I don't think they want to go crazy. I think the 25 that you saw against Green Bay, that's probably the upper limit, right? I think. From time to time, you can do more. I get that. But I think that's roughly the upper limit. So if you can get that 17 up to 20 or 21, maybe, then I think you can be effective. I think you're not riding him too hard, and I think you can allow the Broncos offense to be a little more variable, a little more unpredictable, and find a way to hopefully continue to generate a little more offense than what we've seen in other games this year. The Broncos, remember, got to 20 points. That's their second highest offensive output of the season. They lost, of course, with 24 points to Jacksonville. They've got to get more points than what they have. Does getting the ball to Lindsay more alter that? Or is it just the threat of Lindsay and Freeman together that can make the difference? I want to know what you think as well. RamosLaw.com text line is 303-713-1043. Do you want Lindsay to get the ball more? Should he be your primary guy? Do you want him to be your bell cow type of back? He gets the most carries, and Freeman gets a little bit what's left. A 2/3, 1/3 split, a 3/4, 1/4 split. Is that what you're after? Do you think that's best? Or do you think what the Broncos are doing with the nearly 50-50 split, a little more 55-45 for Lindsey, do you think that's the best way to do it? I'll be honest, I think that's the best way to do it. I think they'll have more success that way. I think they'll keep Lindsey healthier. But this team hasn't really exactly put up the points just yet either. Until they do, I think it's fair to ask the question. It's fair to argue whether they're doing this right. You have a Pro Bowl running back in Philip Lindsey. Should you be using him more?
But Sean, doesn't that count as in the passing game as well? Lining up Philip Lindsey in the slot. I mean, right now you don't have a third wide receiver.
Right. And that's why I was arguing that Noah Fant needs to be a little more involved than he is. But you don't have a clear third receiver. I mean, the third receiver when it comes to stats is Lindsey.
Yeah. I mean, if you were to motion him out, you're now bringing over a linebacker with him. There's a mismatch.
There is.
I mean, I'm not saying he's going to go for a 9 route, and people that don't know that term, it's just a go route. Just run as fast as you can down the field. But if you just get him a little shaking and baking over there on a linebacker.
Well, he has to attract attention for sure. Now, the concern is at any time if you have to go with 2 running backs, then it changes your flexibility, especially on certain downs. You know, you can only go, you have your 5 offensive linemen and your quarterback, that's 6. You can only have 5 other personnel. You're going to want at least 1 tight end. So if you have 2 backs, you have 1 tight end, 2 wide receivers. If you want a double tight end set, you're talking 1 wide out, and you pretty much give away the game. Even if Philip Lindsey kind of splits out or leaks out, runs a wheel route or a swing, you're still giving things away a little bit. So finding the way to go with the 2 running backs, the 1 tight end, the 2 receivers, I think that actually is feasible for the Broncos because that means that you basically do have your 5 most dynamic players on the field. Sutton, of course, and Sanders at wide receiver, Fant at tight end, Lindsey and Freeman in the backfield. Now, if you look at the Broncos in yardage, well, that pans out. So that makes the most sense. Lindsey is number 1 on yardage on the team. Sutton is number 2. Freeman is number 3. Sanders is number 4. Fant's number 5. So you're taking your 5 best guys and putting them on the field. And let's be honest, the drop-off is pretty substantial. Deshaun Hamilton's still finding his way. Jeff Hireman has actually done a very nice job in limited duty, and I think as a backup he's done very well. But there is a drop-off between what Noah Fant can do and what Jeff Hireman can do. There's a big drop-off between what Sutton and Sanders can do and what Hamilton can do. So why not change it up? Why not go with a 2-back set? Why not go primarily with a 2-back set? I think it provides the Broncos the best ability to not only get yardage, but also to protect Joe Flacco. You have 2 backs back there at times. You can have 1 or both of them back there to protect against a blitz. If you want to get Cortland Sutton lined up, if you want Cortland Sutton to run the 9 route, like Kevin said, the go route, the big straight line down the field, right? When you drop when you were out at recess when you were a kid, you just run that way as far as you can. I'll throw it. Well, you have a wide receiver who can do it in Sutton. You have a quarterback that can do it in Flacco if they have the time. You have 2 backs there, and you can do it. Freeman is not a bad blocker. Lindsey's a pretty good blocker. The problem is he's just a little small. But the truth of the matter is you're talking about fractions of a second. If Lindsey can just get in the way of a blitzer, that might be enough. So, to me, Rich Scangarello has an interesting challenge in front of him. He has to look at the way his offense as designed works, and then he has to look at his offense based on the players he has. So there are challenges there.
And go ahead, sorry.
The Colorado Avalanche, by the way, well, they're unbeaten. They hold court tonight. They beat the Bruins 4-2. 2-2 in the third. The Avs come through and get it done. Want to get some detail on that game. So we'll talk to our fan hockey expert, Adrian Dater, next. The Colorado Avalanche have an opportunity to extend their really hot start. They do exactly that tonight. Win again in this early going where they've had an opportunity to basically establish the home ice. But it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. The Bruins took a 2-0 lead early on, goals by Pasternak and Zdeno Chara, have that 2-0 lead early in the first. Nathan MacKinnon comes back with the power play, 2-1, and then that's it. It was Avs the rest of the way. Boston got the first two. Avs come back. They get one in the first. They get one in the second. And then they get two in the final frame to take that game 4-2. And joining us right now is our Avalanche insider, Adrian Dater, joining us courtesy of Bud Light. AD, what happened here? These are the kind of games in the last couple years where the Avalanche would find themselves down early and they would really go south. They clearly were a lot tougher tonight.
Yep. Well said, Sean. This game was, a good kind of looked like a team that had been off a few days, and the Avs were a little rusty, a little shaky early on. A couple of goals against, but after that, I thought the Avalanche were most definitely the better team in the final 40 minutes. I know there were a couple video review calls that went their way, but I think those were the right calls made. Overall, I think the better team won tonight.
You look at the scoring again. Nathan MacKinnon gets the scoring going on the power play, but again, for another game, Belmar gets the goal in the second. Burakovsky gets his first in the third. The new additions have been paying immediate dividends, haven't they?
Yep. Burakovsky's goal was a great one tonight. Broke the 2-2 tie in the third. It was a bar down shot to the right corner, lefty. Avs had put on some pretty good pressure in that zone, and I think the Avs just wore them out in the end. Burakovsky scores. Belmar got that key second goal and tied it. Yep, I know it. And even the fourth line, I mean, kind of dangerous at times. I mean, Belmar scored, but the other two guys had chances too. Calvert, Nichushkin. It was a good game. I mean, they really showed their team speed advantage in the end. I think they just wore the Bruins down, and again, they're just really look impressive. There's not a lot of weaknesses in the game to keep kind of letting teams hang around a little bit. Every game's had an empty net goal, and every game's been a 2-goal difference in the first three games. By definition, those are close games, but it seems like the Avs are a bit better than that. And that's probably a good sign.
Philip Grubauer gives up the two goals in the early going, that opening frame. To me, still, even though I like Grubauer and I really like the potential, to me, he still feels like the X factor for this team, the one that you haven't seen him do it for a long span of time. These are the kind of games for goalies where it can really fall apart. What did you see from Grubauer to tighten things up and basically just batten down the hatches while waiting for his guys to get back in it?
Well, just like you said, I think he got better. He's been really good in the third period of all these wins. Every game's close to the third period, but he's been making the big saves down the stretch to give the Avs the opportunity to score that game winner. And he was great. I mean, in the final 40 minutes of the game, he really made some tough saves. Again, I thought the Avs outplayed the Bruins, but that doesn't mean they still didn't have a few really dangerous chances. Brad Marchand had that one-timer off 2-on-1, and Gruby flashed that pad save. I think David Pasternak had a shot with about 4 minutes left. There was a just a bullet. He keeps allowing some early goals, but he's really tough in the final 40 and get those wins when he needs big saves. Good start for him.
Once again, Nassim Kadri, by the way, a guy doing really good on the faceoffs. We know that Belmar's at it too. He didn't have the greatest day today. He won 6, lost 10. But Kadri, again, wins 8, loses only 3. These differences, getting that possession right off the jump, it's such an advantage for an Avs team that has the skaters these guys have. It's easy to probably overlook when you look at all the points and all the scoring that the Avs can do and realize that so much of it comes from that faceoff. And again, give Joe Sakic credit for making moves to bring guys in who specifically can do that it changes the entire dynamic of the Avalanche's offense.
Yeah, so true. I mean, it's so much better to start with the puck than without it, right? I mean,
funny how that works.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how that does work. You do better usually when you have the puck more, and the fact is the Avs are getting control of it a lot more often thanks to those two guys, Kadri and Bellemare. I mean, I think Bellemare had a slow first game, but he's been really good the last two, obviously, and Kadri wins, 60% of his draws. That really settles things down when let's say you've given up a goal and you try to get back in. Well, when you win the face-off and you get the other team on their heels more, instead of just always feeling like they can get the puck anytime they want, it's a huge advantage, and that's what the Avs have right now.
We're talking with our Avalanche insider, Adrian Dater. You can follow him on Twitter at @Dater. Also, follow his work on ColoradoHockeyNow.com. And I'll take one of we'll go deal with the old chestnut of the reader questions. We had a text earlier. I wanted to ask you about the PK. There were concerns about the penalty kill coming into the year, and our texter had some concerns about it too. Obviously, not much of a problem today, but how do you look at that evolving over the first few games?
Yeah, I think it's going to be okay. I mean, a couple of the goals were unlucky. I think the Avs had that little rough first game on the PK. I know Bellemare was caught for a penalty, and then he was late getting out of the penalty box, and that was one of the goals against came right after. It wasn't on a power play goal, but it's the same kind of thing. I think they're still getting to learn each other. Bellemare and Calvert are the two lead PK guys up front, and they're going a lot with Ryan Graves, who's second-year guy who's playing a lot, blocking a lot of shots. I think he's still trying to get the combination, especially on the back end, what he wants for PK. But better tonight. A couple unlucky goals. That said, they still drive me crazy at times watching them a long time with their sort of clearing. They fail to clear out pucks sometimes. Always seem to put it right back to the point man. Sometimes it drives you crazy after a while, but otherwise, I think it'll be okay. It may not be the best in the league. I think it's going to be a pretty good PK unit, but all said and done.
When you see those kind of mistakes, and I see what you're talking about too, is that a lack of physicality? I mean, they don't have a lot of big bodies, save Johnson and Zadorov. Is that one of the risks that you deal with when you don't have a lot of defenders that are significant in size and can't really knock a guy off the puck? You have to get a little more creative with the stick, and it ends up leading to those kind of errors, or is it something else?
I mean, it used to be that they'd get tired on their own end and sort of fling it back off the boards and get picked off the line pretty easily. It still seems like they get the loose pucks quicker than they used to, but sometimes they still throw it right back to that point man somehow. Like I said, though, I think it's going to be pretty good. I mean, Bellemare's 34 years old, but he doesn't look like it. He looks fast. Matt Calvert is just a tremendous utility man who always going to be dogging on the puck. Don't forget, a lot of PK work is the goaltending, too. Letter the soft goal to wrecks all the percentages. So, that's part of it, too. I think Grubauer has been overall really, really solid the first three games. Just had a little unlucky bounces a couple of times. And also, let's face it, he got a little fortunate tonight. They probably could have counted Boston's fourth goal. The second one that was disallowed, they were outside. That may have skated by it a lot of other times. Otherwise it's a good goal by them. So take your luck when you get it, but I also think Gruby's done a good job.
Well, this is a team that's been averaging more than 4 goals a game. They finished the homestand on Saturday against Arizona. How important is it? You hate to say this early that, boy, you have to start off on a 4-game winning streak, but you would like to get the momentum going because they go on the road for 6 after Saturday's game.
I don't know. We keep talking about that 6-game road trip. If you can go 4-0 in that trip, you really go in, I think, footloose and fancy free. You feel confident. You're gonna feel really good about yourself. If you lose that final game to Arizona, you go on the road. You got Washington on Monday night, which is at a weird time, by the way, 3:00 Mountain Time on Monday.
Right.
Weird things can start happening. You don't want to get bad habits. I think you really go 4-0, and they have that chance now. It makes things a lot easier on that trip. It's probably not going to go 6-0 on that trip, but where they're playing, they're going to be tough to beat. The fact is, though, they've got a winnable game Saturday against Arizona. We'll see how they do on that kind of game. The old Avs teams past kind of maybe let up a little bit, have a letdown against that kind of team. I think they've been better against those teams in the last year, 12 months, calendar year. But you still gotta prove it on Saturday, and we'll see. That'll be a big game in my mind. How they do that game.
He is Adrian Dater, our Avalanche insider. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at adater and everything he's doing at ColoradoHockeyNow.com. Looking forward to talking to you next week, AD. Thank you.
Okay, Sean. Take care.
All right, thanks again. Adrian Dater joins us courtesy of Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the Colorado Avalanche. A 3-0 start for them. Where could that lead? Let us know what you think. The RamosLaw.com text line, 303-713-1043. Are you feeling good about this? Does this feel for real to you? They've been knocking teams out. We'll talk about it next. The Colorado Avalanche get their third win of the season in 3 tries. They knock off the visiting Boston Bruins 4-2 after the Bruins take a 2-0 lead and want to go right to the hotline and talk to our own Sandy Clough, who was there at the game. How are you, Sandy? Sandy, have we got you?
Hi, Sean. How are you?
Good. Just checking in on this Avs game. We had a chance to talk about it with our Avalanche insider, Adrian Dater, and you were at the game tonight, too, and wanted to have a chance to talk to you about it as the Avs jump off to a 3-0 start. And this game was maybe a little different than one of the ones that we've seen. Even though the Avs have gotten a lot better over the last 2 years, there were way too many times when they gave up an early lead and just didn't look like they could punch back. Tonight was very different.
Absolutely. And the Avs have, for some reason, always played very well against Boston, especially back there. But they're 5-0-1 now in their last 6 games against Boston. But in winning the first 2 games, they didn't have to punch back. They got a lead. And Calgary came at them a little bit, so did Minnesota, but they ended up outlasting both, but played for the most part with a lead. Tonight they were down 2-0. I think the Avalanche might want to give a bonus to their video man, who was on top of the 2 challenges for goaltender interference and for the offside call on the power play goal that Boston had apparently scored at the start of the third period. They were on top of both from the bench. Coach Jared Bednar knew that the first challenge might be a little dicey, but they had a very good look at the offside call. It wasn't offside by much, but it was offside. And so I think the combination of goaltending by Philip Grubauer and smart challenging by Bednar, thanks to the quick work of their video people, that contributed mightily to their win tonight, because they were outshot, they were out-hit, they lost most of the face-offs, almost 60% of the face-offs tonight, and yet they found a way to score 4 unanswered goals. And along with Grubauer, I thought the keys for the Avalanche in coming back, the fourth line has been terrific, especially Calvert, who has 3 points in 3 games on right wing, and Belmar, who is acquired for his penalty killing ability via free agency, and he's been a much better offensive player than the Avalanche could have ever imagined he would be. And, of course, Burakovsky, the trade acquisition from Washington back in June, scored his first goal in an Avalanche sweater tonight, and he was terrific throughout the night on that second line for Colorado. And, of course, Nathan MacKinnon got his first goal of the year on the power play late in the first period to cut that 2-0 lead in half. So it's 3 wins, but 3 different ways against 3 stylistically different opponents, Calgary, Minnesota, and Boston. And it's the kind of start that the Avalanche need, quite frankly, because starting on Monday, they're on the road for 6 straight games.
Exactly. And we're talking with Sandy Clough. Sandy in Orlando on from 9 to noon in the mornings every Monday through Friday. Sandy, of course, also handling the post game for the Broncos on Sunday at the 2-minute warning. So make sure you check him out with that. But I'm glad you mentioned Matt Calvert and Pierre-Edouard Bellemare. These are important players that the Avs have added. Calvert, obviously, came last year, and then Bellemare this year. Calvert is a +4 already, and I know that the plus-minus is kind of a very subjective rating. But when it comes to offensive players, to the non-blue liners, Calvert's +4 is way ahead of everyone else, and the guy behind him among skaters is Bellemare. These guys have played that kind of defense that we haven't seen, the avoiding the turnovers, finding a way to make sure that you keep the game from spiraling out of control when you have these bad starts.
Well, you're exactly right, and it's not a matter of spotting these guys either. They're obviously not going to play as much as the top 9 forwards do, but it isn't as if you can only use them for 1 shift a period. They're good for 3 or 4 shifts in any given period. And 5-on-5, they've been very, very good. And this is something the Avalanche, frankly, haven't had, even in making the playoffs the last 2 years. They haven't really been able to threaten anyone offensively beyond the first line and maybe one or two guys on the second line. That's been about it. And now they have that capacity where they don't have to exclusively lean on the top line. And the top line was so good the first half of last year, they were able to get off to a good start. But when that line cooled off around January, February, and until middle of March, Avalanche really struggled to score. And that was their worst stretch of the season. So this, I think, and I was talking to some Avalanche officials after the game, I think, Sean, this is the deepest team the Avalanche have had. Maybe not the best team, but the deepest team they've had since their last Stanley Cup season back in 2001, and that was 19 years ago.
And they're also, when you talk about the top line and you're talking about Avalanche's history, there's some impressive names involved in that. But that top line of Rantanen, McKinnon, and Landeskog, Rantanen hasn't missed a beat. They have 14 points in the first 3 games. Add Cale Makar in there for the power play. He's got 3 of his own. How nasty is that top line power play going to be this year?
Well, it's going to be terrific, I think. And the Avalanche have been very good on the power play in recent years, too. They've been a top 10 power play team. They were 7th last year on the power play. I would guess that they'd be somewhere in the top 10, if not the top 5, this year as well. And you're right. Makar can play on the point. I thought and have thought through the first 3 games that Makar, at least 5-on-5, has been a little shaky at times. I thought that pairing struggled tonight on defense, Makar and especially Zadorov. And yet, you look at Girard, and boy, as he stepped up, and he was plenty good last year. He's had a couple of cracks during the playoffs, and he is their best defenseman, in my view, through the first 3 games. Makar will be fine. He basically was going on adrenaline in the playoffs last year, and he didn't have any kind of break to really think about the transition from a championship NCAA game to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Now this year, there are expectations, and we have to remember how young he is and that technically he is a rookie. Though he did play and star during the playoffs last year for the Avalanche. But it's the depth that really strikes people as being especially impressive because they don't have to lean on that top line. And they have other people who are threats to score, other people who can get them going. And you have, certainly with Makar and Girard in particular, offensive defensemen. And Girard has just been astonishingly good these first 3 games to me. You can trust him, diminutive though he is. You can trust him with 22, 24 minutes of ice time.
He is Sandy Clough. You can catch him every weekday, 9 to noon, with his co-host Orlando Franklin. Thanks, Sandy. Always good talking hockey with you. Of course, you've held this spot down for a couple years. One of the hardest parts is you can't go down there and watch it yourself. So I'm happy you got to go down there and catch one of the games. Thanks for calling in.
Well, I want to remind people, and it's an early game next week, so it'll be over by the time you go on the air. The Avalanche on Wednesday night will be playing the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the game will actually be shown on a thing called television.
Well,
it'll be nationally telecast, so people will actually be able to watch the Avalanche on television. What a concept.
Well, that's what happens when you're good, right? People want to see you a bit more. Thank you so much, Sandy. Appreciate it. Looking forward to hearing you in Orlando tomorrow.
We'll talk to you soon, Sean.
Thank you. He is Sandy Clough, of course, the inimitable Sandy Clough. And a couple of things he mentioned, he's exactly right, by the way. Keep in mind about Sam Girard, who they are entrusting him with 22-plus minutes a game. He's second on the team in ice time per game, only behind Eric Johnson. But the idea that Sam Girard has made a jump, Cale Makar is very exciting. He should be. He's 20 years old. don't forget that Sam Girard, well, he's only 21. This Avalanche team is young, they are talented, and they are going to be a lot of fun to talk about. Want to hear what you think? RamosLaw.com text line is 303-713-1043. The Avs have done a very interesting job of rebuilding and assigning free agency. Wonder if you could make a comparison with the Denver Broncos. Find out why one team's moving in one direction, the other might be moving, well, the other way. I'll explain next. Had a little time for some Avalanche talk. The Avs go to 3-0, winning down at the Pepsi Center tonight. Their third straight game, 4-2 over the Boston Bruins. With 4 straight. Answer back with that early Boston lead. And you look at the way the Avs have been built. Now, obviously, they go young through the draft, and they've done that. But it's the free agency that strikes me as interesting, especially in comparison with the Denver Broncos. For the Broncos, they added a handful of big money guys. They added Joe Flacco, first and foremost. But then they added Juwan James, who was given the biggest contract in NFL history for a right tackle. Now, that was then surpassed in a few weeks, such is the nature of free agency. But they signed James. They signed Bryce Callahan. They bring all those guys in. And they signed Kareem Jackson. Jackson has looked good, but has had injuries. He has looked good. Juwan James played a grand total of 12 snaps. He's been out ever since. Hasn't needed surgery, but just hasn't been able to get healthy. Bryce Callahan is still dealing with injuries from his injury that ended his 2018 campaign in Chicago. The Broncos, in some way, either overlooked or misjudged the impact of that, and they're dealing with the ramifications of it now. That ends up being an interesting comparison because now the Broncos bring their big money guys in, and only 2 of them are playing. And they've already missed time. For the Avs, the guys they bring in, Jonas Donskoy, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, Andre Burakovsky. They make the trade, move away from Tyson Barrie, bring in Nassim Kadri. Kadri's been arguably their best face-off guy. Expect that he'll get a little better as he gets into the season. He's an irritant, can score a little bit. Burakovsky already has 2 points in 3 games. Bellemare has 2 points in 3 games while playing good defense. You heard from Sandy Clough and Adrian Dater before him, both talking about that. Donskoy has 2 goals in his first 3 games. The Avalanche are filling holes just the same way the Broncos are. But the Broncos' propensity to, 1, overpay, and 2, overlook injury seems to be biting them. It's something that the Avalanche haven't done. And it's interesting to compare because, of course, both teams have Hall of Fame players for their franchise running the show. John Elway for the Broncos, Joe Sakic for the Avalanche. Yes, the sports are different, but they are both salary cap sports. The NHL cap has made things challenging for teams too. It's not quite as rigid as the NFL's. But the difference in the way the 2 teams have filled out their rosters couldn't be any more clear. And to me, that's a lot of the reason that there are challenges that the Broncos continue to face. They have to find a way to get healthy. Cornerback Duke Dawson was added right near the final cuts in a trade from the New England Patriots. Patriots traded up to get Duke Dawson. And then after looking at their corral of entirely talented defensive backs, they decided they didn't need Dawson. They moved him along to the Broncos. The Broncos ended up getting him for a low-round pick. Dawson played the most snaps at corner against the Chargers, opposite of Chris Harris Jr. Now, Devontae Bosby would have had those more than likely, but he got hurt. Alexander Johnson accidentally hit him while trying to make a tackle. Bosby is expected to miss probably the rest of the season. He's on injured reserve. Dawson was the guy that picked up the slack. It looks more and more as if Isaac Yiadom can't be counted on for any consistent amount of time on the field, whether it's penalties, whether it's poor play, whether it's the inability to cover. This has been something of a consistent issue. So, Dawson, unfortunately, was limited in practice today. See how that goes going forward, see how important it is. But knowing they're out Callahan, knowing they're out Bosby, knowing that Yadam, I think, has been exposed as a guy that cannot play big snaps for you. Can the Broncos, it's hard to believe this. A few weeks ago, he wasn't even on the team. But can the Broncos afford to lose any other cornerbacks? It's not a great look. Kareem Jackson was brought in to play safety for the Broncos. And if you watched him play against the Chargers, in which he flew all over the field, you understand why. He looked great in that role. But it might be that the Broncos have to take a look at going back to what they did earlier in the year, and you might have to play Will Parks a little bit more, and you might have to play Jackson at corner. It's not what they want to do. It's not the best alignment that they have. But that's where they are. The injuries for this team, because of the Broncos' inability to hire guys who haven't had a clean slate. And I get it. It's football. Players get hurt. They get hurt in every sport. But the Broncos seem to consistently hire players in free agency that have had injury histories, thinking that they're getting some sort of bargain. And it turns out that's rarely the case. This is not the first year it's happened. It's happened with some consistency. That's one of the differences. You look at the difference between what the Avs have done to build and the Broncos are doing to build, it's somewhat similar. Those scenarios that the Avalanche are avoiding are what the Broncos are not. Going to the RamosLaw.com text line, that's 303-713-1043 if you'd like to participate. 303-513 says, it's so funny, the optimism for the Broncos. Could have had a quarterback in his second year blossoming. Imagine trading up for Mahomes or Watson like the Chiefs and Texans did in 2017. But Denver's too stingy with their picks to risk anything. Well, you could make that argument. You also take, when it comes to trades, especially in the draft, it takes two to tango. You have to find a partner who will want what you're trading for as well. Some comments about what the Broncos can do on offense, the splits between Lindsey and Freeman. The 303-475 is a longtime Bronco Country resident. I would like to see a 60-40 split between Lindsey and Freeman, especially if Lindsey gets the hot hand. A 50-50 split later in the season when the weather gets cold is more in order. That's an interesting take on it. Might not be a bad idea. I think you stick with the hot hand regardless. It's not like both of these guys can't play in the snow. Lindsey's from here. It's not like he's not familiar with it. But I get the idea that you might want to play a little more of a power game in the winter. Okay, that's an interesting idea. Tim texted and said, you're not considering a healthy Jano. Now we can allow Royce to be our workhorse, which allows the Broncos to be more creative with Lindsey. Well, that could be as well. The Broncos with Janovich don't really know what they are doing yet. Janovich was really good against the Chargers. It was very easy to overlook how good he was. He was very, very good, immediately effective. And that's a good point. It's a good text, Tim. The Broncos, I think, can benefit from two-back sets. But if you want Janovich out there opening the big holes, playing the power game, well, you're not going to go back and play a college-style three backs back there. Not going to do that. Interesting idea, though. Let's keep them coming. Your ideas. You play Rich Scangarillo for a night. Let me know what you think. RamosLaw.com text line is 303-713-1043. We'll continue with that next. Over the course of the season, and even really before the season began, Vic Fangio has been critical of Broncos linebacker Von Miller. Now, that's critical in a certain manner. It's not as if he's saying that Von Miller's been bad. He clearly is trying to push Miller to be a better player. Now, I've gone over this before. I think that Miller is the kind of player that reacts a little bit better to the carrot rather than the stick. We've seen him mature and play well with guys like DeMarcus Ware. A little more positive, upbeat guys, not the that you're not playing well enough. On Wednesday, Vic Fangio was actually asked specifically about the sort of badgering, is what James Marilat called it on 104.3 The Fan. We talked to him about that yesterday. Badgering of Von Miller from Fangio. Fangio said, I wouldn't view them as challenges, calling out, I think he's doing a lot of things well for us, and some things are better than maybe he's done in the past. Now, obviously, sack numbers are what he would like and everyone would like, but he made a very nice play the other day on 3rd and 3 where they tried to run it up there for the first down. He was the main focal point for winning that down, and that was good. Okay. Again, that's one of the ones where that was Fangio's idea of a compliment to Miller right there. He played well on 1 down. That was good. Okay. He's not pointing out, by the way, that Phillip Rivers' first interception was directly because Von Miller pressured Phillip Rivers into kind of jumping and making a bad throw. But whatever. Fortunately, for those who are worried about this situation or notice that it is a little peculiar, Von Miller himself, well, he has opinions on the subject. Okay, well, I guess you can basically put that to bed. You can point out it's still kind of strange. Fangio does seem to reserve some interesting style of compliments for Miller and more standard styles for other players. But I guess if Von Miller doesn't care, then that's fine. Now, or maybe Miller does care and he just is going to be diplomatic about it, in which case that's probably a good plan too. But it's still something worth monitoring. Von Miller, as I pointed out, is on pace for 58 tackles. Only twice in his career, outside his rookie years, he had more tackles than that. 2016 and 2014. And in 2014, he had 59 tackles. Now, the problem is he's on only a pace for 7 sacks. That's a problem. That said, I don't think sacks are the be-all, end-all for a player. Pressure generates turnovers. Von Miller's pressure generated a turnover last game. So Miller, to me, is having a subpar year, but he's also being asked to do different things. You see Von Miller down the sideline covering guys. That didn't happen very often in the previous few years. It's happened a little more often now. And that's fine. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't do it that way, but I think if sacks are going to end up being the focus, you have to understand that he's being put in a different position where he's not going to get as many sacks based on his responsibilities, how they have changed under Fangio. Now they've changed dramatically, not only under Fangio, but because Bradley Chubb won't be there all year long. The Broncos, unlike the Bears last year, Vic Fangio, of course, ran that terrific Bears defense that was spearheaded in many ways by Khalil Mack. Von Miller and Khalil Mack play the same position. But Von Miller doesn't have Roquan Smith or Danny Trevathan in the middle. He certainly doesn't have Eddie Goldman in that big front ahead of him. The Broncos reshuffled basically two of their starters along the line, starting Shelby Harris at end, moving him from nose tackle, and starting Mike Purcell at nose tackle. Both of the Bears' cornerbacks went to the Pro Bowl last year. The Broncos simply do not have the same defense that the Bears do. Only Vic Fangio would know in his heart of hearts if he expects Miller to play to the level that Mack does. I think Von Miller does play basically to the level that Khalil Mack does. The difference is he just doesn't have as much help. But in the end, look, if Von Miller's okay with it, then so be it. That's really all that matters. You're trying to avoid a Jalen Ramsey type situation where somebody gets annoyed or hurt, or there's an argument on the sidelines or something like that, and it fractures the relationship. According to Miller, that's not anything to worry about. So, great. That's good news. That's what you hope for. I still find it strange. I still think it's a peculiar manner of treating Miller, in part because it's so different than the way he treats a lot of the other players. But, again, that's more Von Miller's problem, and he doesn't seem to have an issue with it. So, that's fine. He's the guy that picks it. Judging by the sacks, by the way, Miller could get right even without Bradley Chubb. Even with Todd Davis and Alexander Johnson in the middle, even with Mike Purcell being your nose tackle, he might have an opportunity to get back on track when it comes to the sacks, because the offensive line for the Titans is, shall we say, subpar? That's the most diplomatic way I could put it. Marcus Mariota is one of the more nimble quarterbacks in the league. That guy can move. He can move in the pocket, and he can run when he gets outside the pocket. He's been sacked 22 times in 5 games. That's more than 4 a game. That's a lot for a guy like Mariota. So if other teams have been getting to him at that rate, and it's not as if they've been playing the most elite schedule in the league. They lost their opener to they won their opener to Cleveland in terrific fashion. They smoked Cleveland. That was the warning, the canary in the coal mine, that Cleveland might not be as good as everyone thought. They lost to the Colts. They lost to the Jaguars. They beat the Falcons. They lost to the Bills. Jacksonville has a pretty good pass rush. So does Cleveland. Indianapolis really doesn't. Atlanta really doesn't. Buffalo's got a pretty good defense. But when you're averaging more than 4 sacks a game surrendered in 5 games, your line probably isn't very good. And that's reasons for optimism for Von Miller. On the drive, Tyler Polumbus talked about the O-line for the Titans today. He would know quite a bit about that, of course. Tyler is joined the drive this week, and you've been hearing, his bona fides. Played in the league, played for the Broncos, played for the Buffs, played for the Cherry Creek Bruins. So when Tyler tells you something about an O-line, it's worth listening to. So we'll listen next. 22 sacks in 5 games. That's what the Tennessee Titans have allowed. Marcus Mariota is taking his lumps. To get an idea of how bad that really is, I mean, you're talking about a pace in which he'd have 70 sacks. 70. That's how bad this has been for the Tennessee Titans and their offensive line. On the drive earlier today, Tyler Polumbus had a chance to talk about that line. Let's just say he was less than impressed. That is Tyler Polumbus earlier today on the drive, and obviously some pretty harsh criticism there. And the idea that they're getting it done on the ground, they are and they aren't really. I mean, when you look at the rankings, it's not as if the team is going absolutely bonkers in a running game by any stretch of the imagination. The Broncos are 12th in running yards per game as a team. Okay. The Titans are 14th. So they're not exactly grinding it out necessarily. Titans have 4 rushing touchdowns on the year. The Broncos have 3. It's pretty close. I'm not really sure they're a better run blocking team than the Broncos. The yards per carry indicates they're not. The Broncos have 4.5 yards per carry. The Titans at 4.2. So when you take a look at what they're doing on the ground, it's a little bit inferior to the Broncos. But even the Broncos, look, they give up some sacks, especially earlier in the year. They've given up 14 on the year. That's not great, okay? That puts them 12th in the league in sacks surrendered. You want to be 32nd. The Titans are only 1 out of the league's worst. Only the Jets with 23 have surrendered more. Oh, and for the Jets, want to get a bad idea. They've had a bye week. Yikes. Welcome back, Sam Darnold. Hope it works out for you. But the Titans have 22 sacks allowed. They've lost 155 yards on their sacks. That is the worst in the entire league. It's a bad offensive line. It's a mediocre running offensive line. It's a bad pass blocking offensive line. There's just no two ways about it. So for Von Miller, it looks like there's an opportunity to get right. Also, you look at some of the pressure that Shelby Harris can bring from the outside as opposed to the inside where he can't do as much. Mike Purcell did a nice job blocking things up. Maybe you can do a little bit more. If Dawson can go and you trust him, he played 81% of the snaps against the Chargers on Sunday. If he can go, then maybe you can bring Kareem Jackson on a blitz. Maybe there's a way to go that route. Maybe you can blitz Alexander Johnson. Maybe you can do a couple things. You can bring Malik Reed. Malik Reed looked good opposite Bradley Chubb. He's not Bradley Chubb, but he looked good. For an undrafted rookie, he belonged. And so I think that is exciting for the Broncos too. They have enough on defense that they should be able to really harass Mariota. And as I've talked about here, when you look at their running offense, on the whole, it's kind of mediocre. By definition, they're right in the middle. So this seems like a great fit, an absolutely great fit for the Broncos defense to really ignite and do a lot better. Hoping that ends up being the case. Obviously, getting back to 2-4 changes the dynamic of the season a little bit. Still maybe a little too little, a little too late, but you'd much rather be 2-4 than 1-5. For the Broncos who have potential personnel decisions to make if they want to get toward the trading deadline, well, you want to be a little closer to 2-4 than 1-5 and believe that you're still making forward progress. This team needs some traction. They can get it. They can get it on offense, and they get it on defense. The defense of the Titans is better than we're probably giving it credit for. They have some playmakers there. I think the Broncos have more playmakers if they can use them correctly. So this is down to Rich Scangarello and what he does. But on the defense for the Broncos, for Vic Fangio, he's basically now had a week with this new alignment. There were a lot of new starters. Remember, Harris is a new starter. I'm going to call it a new starter because he's starting in a new position. Harris was a new starter. Purcell was a new starter. Johnson was a new starter. Reed was a new starter. Reed's going to continue going because Justin Hollins got hurt. Bosby was a new starter. He's basically been replaced by Dawson. So assuming Dawson can go, you're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Out of your 11 guys on defense, 5 are relatively new or completely new starters. But you have speed, you have talent, and they can do something with this. This is a good matchup for the Broncos defense, probably the best one they've had all season long. There's concern, given the power game. You saw what Josh Jacobs did. You saw what Leonard Fournette did. Derrick Henry's a load. He's a big guy. He will bring it all game long. But since the passing game for the Titans is not that impressive, I think you'll be able to do a little bit more if you're the Broncos to stop that run. You're not going to sell out. You probably don't have to sell out. But you're going to make them beat you through the air before you're going to worry about it too much. That's probably the right thing to do. So I think this game, as you try to talk yourself into or out of a Broncos win or a Broncos loss, I think the Broncos are set up very well for this. It's just that simple. Now, they have to find a way to get it done. That's the trick, right? They have to find a way to get it done. And the Broncos have failed at that a few different times this year. Maybe they were the better team. Maybe they should have gotten the win, but they didn't get the win. And in the end, if you didn't get it, well, you didn't get it. Nobody feels bad about you. That's the way it goes. The Broncos now know at least that they can win after beating the Chargers on the road. Now they need to prove it. Now you need to go get a win in your own building against a team that you know you can beat. If they can go do that, even if it's ugly, I think then you see the maturation of Vic Fangio and Rich Scangarello. You see these players. You see a team that is moving in the right direction again. It is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of the journey. But you want to see them getting some sort of traction. I think they can do that. The Denver Nuggets had their second preseason game tonight. If you were looking for it on, say, television, you wouldn't see how it turned out because all of the highlights, I mean all of them, all of the highlights, literally had it on the television that we have in the studio here, literally counted, all of the highlights were of the LA Clippers. You might be pleasantly surprised who won. I'll tell you the score next. You wouldn't know it by watching the national highlights. They were very, very enthralled with the idea that Kawhi Leonard is playing in a L.A. Clippers uniform. But the Nuggets had their second preseason game of the year, and they won by 20 in L.A. 20. Yes, Kawhi Leonard played and played well. He had 7 points and 6 assists and a rebound in his 11 minutes. Clippers are going to be good. They're going to be really good. But then, and count on it, expect it. Look, if you've lived here my whole life, I know how this works. Doesn't really bother me. The Nuggets are not going to get credit on the national media until they get to at least the Western Conference Finals. Just accept it. But what you do is you take the W's. It's preseason, you don't go overboard. But Nikola Jokic made his debut. 10 points, 11 boards, 3 assists, 3 steals, and a block in 22 minutes. Looks ready to go there. Maybe the most important thing about it, though, is the idea that Michael Porter Jr., we had a chance to hear from our Nuggets insider Matt Moore last night talking about Porter's debut in the previous game. The interesting thing about this was to see how Porter would then play with Jokic. The Nuggets are very excited about Porter. They should be. He's basically going to be given the opportunity, according to Matt, to earn everything that he can handle. And obviously that's the right choice. You need to go ahead and, if you have top-tier talent and you're planning on competing to be literally in the mix to win the championship, you have to do that. Well, early results were good. In only 12 minutes and in his second game, Porter Jr. put up 12 points on 6 for 7 shooting. Also pulled down 5 rebounds in those 12 minutes, had an assist and a steal. Plus 15 on the night. Will Barton, the person ostensibly he'd be competing with, 3 for 11 in 22 minutes, 7 points, 6 boards, 2 assists. But again, 3 for 11. Barton took the most shots of anybody on the team, as he is wont to do, and made 3 of them. There's one of the challenges for the Nuggets, and we'll see when the regular season rolls around. And I understand the coaching staff is fond of Will Barton. I understand the front office is fond of Will Barton. Will Barton, even in preseason, if you are starting your normal 5, and they were, Jokic started at center, Millsap at the 4, Barton at the 3, Murray and Harris at the guard. Will Barton should never be taking the most shots of the starting 5 ever, under any circumstances, ever. If they're all healthy, it should never happen. So keep an eye on that. As Malik Beasley in his 19 minutes put up 16 points, shooting a very efficient 6 for 8 with 6 boards and 2 assists, outplaying Barton in his 22 by leaps and bounds. Keep an eye on that. Beasley apparently is going to be made the backup 2 guard to Gary Harris, which I suppose I get if Porter starts. Only 2 preseason games in, but mark my words, Will Barton did not start after game 1 of the playoffs because the Nuggets went to Torrey Craig. Torrey Craig is a defensive specialist who can play a little bit, but he's not a starting caliber guy. He was a better starting choice in the playoffs than Will Barton. The Denver Nuggets desperately need Michael Porter Jr. to take that job away from Will Barton, and the sooner, the better.
Sean, what's the over-under before he gets to start a game during the season?
Porter?
Because obviously they're going to start Will Barton day 1.
Probably.
How many games in the season?
30.
Before they decide, hey,
I think so.
We should probably make the switch.
Yeah, I think so. I would say any sooner than that would be shocking. The Nuggets are notoriously stubborn here on Barton, who is a fine player. There's nothing wrong with Will Barton. But on another team that is a championship caliber team, he is your 7th, 8th, or 9th man.
He's like a spark off the bench.
Right. And if he's going to go out there and jack up a shot every other minute, which he does with regularity and did tonight, even in a preseason game, then you can do that off the bench when the team's behind and they need a spark. You can go out there and be the focal point of the bench unit and try to score some points. But it cannot work when the other guys on the court are Nikola Jokic, Paul Millsap, Jamal Murray, and Gary Harris, because all four of those guys are infinitely better at the NBA level playing basketball than Will Barton. That's just where the Nuggets have to be. That, to me, is the story. You'll find out where the Nuggets go if they can adjust and adapt. We watched the Broncos miscast Shelby Harris as a nose tackle. Shouldn't have been there. I talked about it right off the bat. I get why they tried it, but it was very obvious that he wasn't a good fit. The things he could do that were special, he couldn't do in the middle, had to move away. Well, it took the Broncos 5 weeks, but they did. And then look what happens. They have their best defensive outing of the year, and they win. So sometimes you may like players. You may want to be stubborn about your plan, your system, and all of that, but you have to put the players in the best position to succeed, and you have to be able to put them together when it comes to fit. And I know the idea that we'll hear out of Pepsi Center is that Will Barton fits in their scheme. He's used to playing with those guys. So what? You know who's used to playing with Kawhi Leonard on the Clippers? Nobody. Nobody, because he just joined the Clippers. You think that's going to make a lick of difference? No. So don't fall for that line. Malik Beasley is likely to be shopped and probably likely to be traded unless the Nuggets decide to make a move away from Will Barton and do it soon. Beasley is already a better player than Will Barton. Wouldn't take Porter a major leap to be better than Will Barton. If the Nuggets were to lose Malik Beasley because they trade him away, because they don't want to pay him, because they think they have Will Barton there to fix it, that's the same kind of thing that the Broncos have been doing with middle linebacker for the last few years and been constantly being surprised that it doesn't work. So keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, the Nuggets are in really good shape. They really are. There's a lot of talent on the team, and it really is complimentary. Jeremy Grant is going to surprise a lot of people. If you haven't watched him play, that's a great pickup for the Nuggets. But it's that Barton story that may end up defining how far the Nuggets really can go.
Sean, do you think I've never gotten a legit answer, so that's why I'm asking this. But do you think this team needs a legit starting veteran point guard and letting Jamal Murray play the shooting guard role instead of playing point guard?
No, because you can do it a lot of different ways. And I'll go back to actually even the Bulls teams with Jordan Pippen that were winning. Scottie Pippen was really the point guard. John Paxson or Steve Kerr, depending on who was back there, they were back there to bomb away. They were back there to bomb away from three-point land. They weren't really bringing the ball up. Scottie Pippen was their point guard, and he was the three. LeBron James has basically been the point guard on most of the teams he's played on. Nikola Jokic is your point guard. And he's really, really, really good at it. And the fact that you could play that way and really mess up everybody's defensive rotations is not quite as extreme. But if you watch the University of Colorado lose to Air Force a few weeks ago, Colorado just doesn't see an offense like that ever and really just didn't know what to do with it. The Nuggets, with Jokic being the primary ball handler, do that to teams all the time. They just get bamboozled by that. And so, no, I don't think you have to. It'd be great. Murray needs to cut down on the turnovers. He does need to pass a little bit. But I think as long as the ball is flowing and not getting sticky, Will Barton, the one guy who it shouldn't get sticky for, as long as the ball doesn't get sticky. And Porter Jr. is going to have to work with that too. He's a guy that he likes a shot. Then this team has a chance to make a lot of noise. Just don't expect to hear from it anywhere but locally. Because the national media doesn't care at all. But that's okay. Because it's not college basketball. It's not college football. There's no polls. It's just W's. Nuggets are going to get a lot of them. Be fun to see how this team goes along over the course of the season, and especially how they start. Nuggets now 2-0 will take on the Phoenix Suns for their third preseason game that will happen on Monday. A lot going on in sports, of course, as always. Had an interesting, for about 3 quarters, Thursday night football game. Tom Brady became second all-time on the passing yardage list. Kevin Kistner's in the booth, still very upset with that. You had to know it was coming, man. It was coming. It was coming for a long time.
8 more games than Peyton. Peyton's still the GOAT.
Good thing they don't count playoff yards then, huh?
Well, see,
because Brady'd be way ahead in that.
Well, when you film practices and stuff like that, and when you play in the worst division in football.
Well, that's true, but you got to get over it, man.
Well,
look, I had my moment. I figured it out. It took me a while. I've just come to terms with it. Brady's the best ever. He's won the most Super Bowls. He's going to have all the yards. He's going to have all the points. He's going to have all the stats. He's going to have all of it. He is. That's life. Okay. That's fine. Just move on.
We could have this debate another time.
Move on with your life. It's okay. Brady is now second all time in that. Runs for 2 touchdowns tonight. Go figure. Not exactly how they drew it up, but a lot of exciting stuff going on in sports, especially baseball. You have the championship series are set. You have a WNBA championship. Might not have known that was today, and not going to give it a long look, but I'll tell you what, you don't run into a lot of times when the champion ends up with their best player having a herniated disc in their back and still going out there and bawling. That happened too. We'll take you around the tour of sports as we close out the show next. You have 2 championship series all set up in baseball after the Houston Astros behind Garrett Cole beat the Rays 6-1, finishing them in Game 5. Cole, by the way, has been absolutely dealing. The Rays were scoreless over 7 2/3 in Game 2. He struck out 15 in that, almost tying Bob Gibson's record. In the 2 games combined, 25 Ks. That broke the record for a division series round. It was actually held by his teammate, Justin Verlander, and Steven Strasburg, the only postseason pitcher to strike out more hitters in consecutive outings, the one and only Bob Gibson. He has been phenomenal. So, great performance there by the Astros. They will face the Yankees. That's only the 7th time that a league championship series will face 2 100-win teams against one another. And bad break for the Rays. It wasn't everything, but unfortunately, Tyler Glasnow, their starting pitcher, he was tipping his pitches. He held his hands a little higher up to his chest, up under about his neck when he was throwing a fastball, had a little bit lower about the letters of the jersey when he was throwing a curveball. And Alex Bregman was caught on audio basically telling teammates that if he held them high, it was a fastball. If he held them low, it was a curveball. It's actually what happened. Glasnow, after the game, said, quote, "I went back and looked, and it was pretty obvious as far as the tips go." So that's unfortunate for him. And that isn't necessarily the idea that it automatically gives something away, but it doesn't hurt. Bregman said whether that changed the game. He said, no. He's as tough to face as anyone. If you went around and asked anybody on our team, it was a team approach today. It was just one thing after another. So they were trying to take advantage of what they could, and that's the game. It wasn't sort of signals they were stealing. They just saw something in this day, and that's where it goes. So the Astros move on. They will face the Yankees. Starting tomorrow, the NLCS will begin. Nationals at Cardinals. Anibal Sanchez will take the mound against Miles Mikolas in Game 1 there. And then Saturday, Game 2 of the NLCS and Game 1 of the ALCS for the Yankees and the Stros. Kind of feels to me like the winner of that ALCS is going to win the whole thing. But I don't know. The Nationals are the wild card team. The Cardinals won the Central, but the Nationals won more games than the Cardinals. Nationals had 93 wins, Cardinals 91. So should be fun to catch some of these, to see how these teams match up. Always good to catch the baseball playoffs, and by the way, you can catch a lot of those right here on 1600. Over the WNBA, the Washington Mystics in their 23rd season win the finals over the Connecticut Sun. Really impressive performance by Elena Della Donna, by the way, who has not 1, not 2, but 3 herniated discs in her back and scored 21 tonight. That's impressive. Wow. Going over to the NFL, thought it was kind of funny too, by the way. The story broke that Bob Kraft, not surprisingly, would like Rob Gronkowski to unretire, pointing out on Thursday night on the NFL Network that Gronkowski had not filed his paperwork for retirement. Now, Gronkowski was actually on Fox's pregame show. He has a new job there as an analyst. But Kraft said about Gronkowski possibly returning, quote, "We can pray and hope." Gronkowski, for his part, said of his decision to retire earlier, "I was not in a good place. Football was bringing me down, and I didn't like it. I was losing that joy in life," and described himself as, quote, "very satisfied with where I am in life now." So, kind of weird to see Bob Kraft, the owner of the 6-0 Pats, the favorite to win everything again, you run into him basically sort of begging and pleading for Rob Gronkowski to come back. That's kind of weird. But I don't know. It's the Patriots. Expect just about everything there. Big game by the Avs. Big game by the Nuggets. Avs now move to 3-0. Nuggets 2-0 in the preseason, but playing well and most importantly healthy. This Broncos game, as we continue to break it down, and we'll continue to break it down all over the station. Heard Tyler Polumbus earlier talk about how porous the Titans' offensive line is, and it is. That's where I think you have the most confidence for the Broncos that they can really make some hay. That they have a chance to really do some things against this very, very bad O-line. I do think the Broncos are going to get to Mariota. I do think they're probably going to get sacks, but most importantly, they're going to get pressures. And if they get pressures, they might get turnovers. And if you get turnovers, they'll get a win. We'll get into the game in earnest tomorrow as well. We'll spend some time breaking down units and all that sort of fun stuff. The Broncos go for their second win of the year. Hope you enjoyed the chilly weather today. A little winter preview. I did. I'm a winter guy. I like the snow. I thought it was gorgeous. It's not going to stick around. By the time the Broncos play, it's supposed to be 70 in Denver. So nothing to worry about there. Turns around really, really quickly. Want to take some time, thank a lot of our guests. We had Adrian Dater, our Avalanche insider. He came on today to talk about that Avs win. Sandy Clough called in to talk about it. He was down at the game, watching it, checking it out. Nice enough for Sandy to call in. Make sure you check him in Orlando out 9 to noon tomorrow morning. They will start digging into the Broncos-Titans matchup as well. Thanks to everyone who interacted on the RamosLaw.com text line. A lot of good conversation there regarding the Broncos, regarding the Avalanche, and even a little bit regarding the Nuggets. It was good to get the responses there as well. Kevin Kisner's in the booth. That's the guy that you hear talking every once in a while. Peyton Manning's biggest fan. Not too happy with Tom Brady. He's going to have to get over it, though, because those stats still count. They can't change it. But I can't tell you what to believe, Kevin. It is what it is. Tom Brady is number 2. Drew Brees is number 1. Peyton Manning now down to number 3. No one will actually remember that, so it doesn't really matter. Where's John Elway now? Does anyone even know? I don't know.
Oh, he's probably
like
10.
9 or 10.
10.
Yeah, no one knows. No one cares. They know that he's really good. He was really good. Manning's going to be the same. Yardage doesn't matter. Thanks to all of you for listening and participating. Looking forward to doing it again tomorrow. We'll turn things over to our friends at SportsCenter overnight. My name is Sean Drotar. You can follow me on Twitter if you'd like at SDrotar. Thank you very much for listening to the Fan Late Night. Good night.